Board games. We'll be talking about board games and what we've done recently. I'm not gonna shout. We will be having a bit of a catch up, and we'll be talking about what's up, what's going on with the pandemic. Hopefully, we've avoided being sick. Maybe we'll talk about the pocket campaigns, and we'll talk about some of the future things' names. Maybe we'll talk about Kingmaker, on which Alan Paull is a redesigner. Maybe we'll talk about some 2020 plans, and we'll talk about what our own personal demands on ourselves, because, you get what I mean, like kind of
Yeah.
personal demand, like resolutions. And maybe we'll talk about future shows, and we'll think about some topics for all of those board games. And catching up, it's what we're talking about. Catching up with Alan Paull. I'm not gonna shout. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are.
Hello, everybody.
It is 10 a.m. UK time, busy beats and board game blether, and it is a delight after a bit of absence because I had my 500th episode a while ago, had another extravaganza, decided that maybe 25 hours is a wee bit like too much. I mean, in summer when I was like just feeling amazing and I felt like everything was great, I think it was okay at that point. But in winter, I was just feeling not so great. And once I got to frankly, 1 o'clock, and then from 3, it was a bit too much and then was falling asleep at certain points whilst the Australians were keeping me company. But I did perk up right at the end. But then we've not had our regular discussions, and we have been chatting about when we saw each other. We said, let's do it again. Let's have some more fortnightly discussions. Let's make it a regular event on the calendar, right?
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea. Yes, I have missed it actually. It has been. It was because it was a regular feature of the calendar. I was falling into a kind of lockdown routine or whatever, and it's great to be back. It's great to be back, Bez. Great to see you.
And
although to be fair, we have actually met up in person.
Yes.
Although that seems like one heck of a long time ago.
Maybe we can talk about that. And also hello to Jess, who says an extra Bez again. So many extra Bezes this week. How many will there be? Well, follow the stuffbybez.com/streams if you want to get the plans, or if you want to be surprised, don't look at it. It's entirely your choice.
There is of course only one Bez. Just saying.
I mean, this seems to be a running gag where Jess calls all of my guests extra Bezes, because apparently everyone's a replacement for me. But yeah, today's just going to be a hodgepodge of different things. As you can see down there, we're going to be talking about Kingmaker, COVID, a wee bit about that, because it has affected things, and yeah, some future topics and pocket campaigns and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But for now,
where would we like? Are you doing the regular?
I am starting off still with recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So, shall I go first with what's happened up to yesterday? Yesterday, I went over to where I used to live. I had a bit of an appointment. I also was progressing a tiny bit with some cards that are for a future game, a game about speed drafting. It's a speed game, but it's an actual strategic speed game, if you know what I mean. So I think this is quite a rarity. I mean, I know you've got Escape, and Space Alert, which actually have quite a bit of strategy going on.
Galaxy Trucker as well.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, there are quite a few, but it is still unusual, let's say, for speed games. And this is a quick 5 minutes game where you're you end up with 7 cards at the end, and it's very much inspired by fantasy realms. I think
Okay.
that's the correct yeah, the one where you end up with a bunch of cards and they all have different effects and they're working with each other, and it's about finding the most synergy. And you've got your 7 cards at the end, and it's about quickly reading what's possible on the table and then grabbing the cards that you want before the other people do. When someone's got to 7 cards, everyone else has 1 more turn, so there's a tiny bit of chance to catch up. You can fall a little bit behind, but not too much. And then I feel like the basic mechanisms are there. I'm just trying to work out ideas for other cards. So this is something that's constantly on my mind, and I'm taking little notes for it.
Excellent.
I also played a couple of games. Mismatch is a little game about, it's very cute art. Firstly, you've got a little comic that tells you how to play. So that's quite cute.
That's quite cute. Yeah, like that.
You've got these big cards that give you themes that you might want to match. Films, celebrities, TV, for example. And I do quite like that font that they've chosen. And
yeah, that's quite good. That's a very Bez font.
And then finally, they've got all these topic cards, and the idea is that you match one of these categories to you match multiple cards, basically. So if you've got pirates and celebrity, you might say Johnny Depp, because Johnny Depp being so well known for Pirates of the Caribbean. And yeah, that was a game that was given to me as a kind of thing to consider as basis of what a company is sort of looking for. Alley Cat Games took over that after it was sold at UK Games Expo. They saw it, it already had all the art done, and they said, let's take it on and let's do a bit more publishing. Empire Express is a Crayon Rails game, and I found out that Alan had never played.
I never played a Crayon Rails. No.
I felt like this is the kind of game that you would be really into.
What was the old Games Workshop one? Was that a Crayon Rails game?
I'm not familiar. Well,
there was one where you write in the tracks. You draw in the tracks, I think. I'm not sure if it counts as a Crayon Rails game.
I don't know the games that you're talking about.
Was it Railroad Tycoon, I think?
I'm afraid I don't know the one you're talking about.
Well, okay. I will peek it up.
But in this game, just to show a quarter of the board, this is 1/4 of the board. You've got lots of dots, and so drawing from dot to dot costs you 1 money. If you go up the mountains, it costs you a little bit more. Let me make myself a tiny bit bigger. And if you go into the cities, it costs you even more. You've got cards that tell you to gather resources from certain cities, deliver them to other cities. You've only got the 1 track. This is designed to be the simplest of the Crayon Rails games, but it's still a multi-hour thing to play. Okay. You'll still be gathering your money, thinking about how to best plan your tracks, and each card is multifunctional, so you've always got 2 options on each card, which is quite nice.
So
and you also have.
Is it like an 18XX then?
Very simplified. You don't have stocks and shares. You're You're only running your own company.
Yes.
But I would say it's vaguely similar to Steam, but again, it's simplified. But just the name Crayon Rails, it makes you think, this is a kiddie game. I could just draw on Rails, but it's not that at all. It is a game that where if you like things, economic games, it was actually quite nice just seeing the map halfway through the game before we decided to abandon it, because one of the party was not super into it and just felt it was a bit too much for them, and other friends that I was playing with said, yeah, you know what, I'm ready to stop so we can play something that you enjoy, and Bez and I can play it another day. So that is something that we will probably play another day, because yes, it is.
This was I was thinking of Railway Rivals. Sorry, I got the name wrong. Yeah,
I will have to check that out.
1979. Back in 1979, it was a Games Workshop game, and it's the use a water-based marker to draw in the track and wipe off.
That does sound like a very similar thing.
I don't think it was particularly complicated. I think let's look at the geek rating, 2.23. So, not.
I mean, by Board Game Geek
much,
standards, it's not complicated.
No.
By like your standards, it would be fairly simple. But if someone's had a full working day, if they're a bit tired, if they're not really in the mood for learning a new game, then it's not really appropriate. And Alex says, so the simplest version is still multiple hours. I mean, on the box, it says 60 to 90. Wait, you can see that?
Sounds like you didn't have that experience.
Like we played for 90 minutes, but bear in mind it was the first time ever playing.
Exactly.
And we probably another half hour we might have gotten to the end. So for a first game, it would have been 2 hours, which is not too far from what the box says. But it's again, it's all relative, whether you're a devout board gamer who's really familiar with the concept of different money for different landmarks and multifunctional cards and pick up and deliver. And, you know, if you've played these kinds of games before, it's going to be fairly, not simple, but straightforward, let's say.
Yeah.
But if one or more of these things is new to you, of course, there's going to be a bit of a learning challenge.
I've never tried to design one of that type of game. Perhaps it's worth a go. I mean, it's similar, you know, roll and writes. I've never really. Well, I've been involved in one we were doing with Matt Dunstan and Rob Harper, but we haven't actually done a huge amount with that since we did the original work back when we were doing it with you, Bez, in your one of your game design sessions. That's the only time I've been involved, I think, in anything which is scribbling on your boards type of stuff. I probably should do more of that. I mean, I suspect. I know that one of our group in the Ely playtest group, which used to be the Cambridge playtest group, but Brett moved to Ely, so now it's the Ely playtest group. He has been developing a kind of World War II thing, which isn't actually it isn't completely drawing on stuff, but it's got quite a strong element of drawing on where your armor is going to go in that direction. You draw on the map, and that's quite an interesting way of designing a kind of a very abstract type of war game, because it's in a way it's reflecting that idea on if you look at maps of World War II battles, it's all arrows in different directions and then circumvents and all this kind of stuff. And actually, he thought, wouldn't it be an idea to have a game like that where you're actually where your troops are going, just drawing an arrow on? And it's quite a fun little concept. So, you know, it's definitely
there's definitely something viscerally pleasing about the concept of permanent marks. Whether it's something on a board that's been laminated and then you wipe it all at the end of the game, or whether it's something on a bit of paper and then you either keep the paper for the memories or you
because nowadays you can take a photograph of the last position, but it gives you that freedom, doesn't it? You don't feel as restricted as you would if you're placing pieces, because you're just drawing lines. Especially if you've got options in the game.
Do you mean that there's more granularity? Like there's more variability in what you can do. Like I mean, drawing a line from dot to dot in that game. If you were to have that fidelity with track pieces, that would be ridiculous. Searching for tiny little things for sure. Yeah, I get what you mean now. Alex. And Alex asks, have you ever played a pen and paper game, Battleships?
Oh, let me think. Yes. Good. Yes, it's very, very, nothing's new. Well, even the old game that I used to go on about, Sea Strike, that all the options on Sea Strike were basically scribbling on the pieces. You mark up your pieces to enhance the weaponry, things like that. So writing on pieces is a very, very old method of doing things. Flicking stuff. That's an idea.
I think let's talk about.
Used to play that at school, flicking a pencil thing so it makes a line, and if you hit the opponent's ship, you knock the ship out. Dexterity roll, right?
Just to catch up with the chat a tiny bit, Jess says, I had some nice classes on consumerism. That sounds very interesting. So, are you teaching your students about consumerism? But now I am sleepy, so my highlight is resting.
Mm.
Alex,
Well,
my recent achievement is that I fixed the curtain pole. It had been partially yanked out of the wall. Congratulations on that.
yes, well done.
And hello, Tally. It is lovely to see you, and I hope that you're generally well. I love this game. Which one are you talking about? Given the chat, do you mean Battle or do you mean Empire Express? But so yes, Alan, what are some of your recent highlights?
Right. Well, yesterday evening, Tuesday evenings is our new face-to-face board game evening, which we have. But generally, we have Vic and Lee, my eldest daughter Vicky, and her husband, and they come round. And we often have Fi as well, who also comes around usually. But yesterday we just had the four of us, so me, Charlie, Vic, and Lee, and we played Dice Hospital, which is excellent. We're certainly going with the Alley Cat games, aren't we? I think. So that was really fun. Lee hadn't played before, so we're introducing the game to Lee, and obviously it's very topical, isn't it? You know, although we didn't play the pandemic variation, we just played the normal Dice Hospital. But I like playing that because it's lovely to teach. It's really easy to teach.
There's a really nice sense of puzzle and personal achievements when you actually manage to get the run. Where if you've got one of the experts who rewards you for being able to treat 3 people at a time.
Yes, exactly.
You have to be the same color and in a run. That's kind of difficult to achieve. But then once you manage to set it up, so you're hitting that turn after turn after turn.
I managed to do that. I had the administrator that gives you an extra point if you discharge a red, one of each color, a red, a yellow, and a green patient. So that was useful. So yeah, that was a good one. Oh, we've got it's actually Fi's coffee, which we were using, and he's got the fully pimped up version with the proper ambulances, which you put the resin ambulances, which you put the dice in. Makes it look really smart. It's good. So that was good. And we also played Coloretto, which is a long-standing favourite that we have. I suppose it's a kind of filler, but anyway, yes, it was good. No, it's. I prefer Coloretto to all the other ones like Zularetto or the other ones that they've built on it, because Coloretto is like, it's got that purity of all you do is you pick a card, you place a card, or you take a set, and it's all about working out the odds. And we had a lovely situation at the end where Charlie had taken quite a lot of negatives, quite a lot of negative points. I mean, she had four.
Because you score your 3 colors,
your first 3 colors,
and everything else scores negative.
Yeah,
and
but
so if you balance all your colors, then you've done terribly.
Yeah, she had actually four sets of 3, which was not brilliant. But she worked out that at the end, she had quite a good chance of winning. We dropped out. The rest of us all dropped out in the last round fairly early with a moderately reasonable effort, but things were getting bad for the other 3 of us, and so Charlie at the end drew 2 cards off the top to finish her set, and she actually made it. She actually won by taking that big risk at the end, and we looked at the deck, and actually it was about a 50-50 chance of her getting enough to win. So that was a really gutsy play. It was good. Yeah. So we had a good time, and I think Dice Hospital will probably be a regular in the group.
I feel like Coloretto, for me, it's up there with such games. I want to say No Thanks, and also a whole bunch of bidding auction games like For Sale and High Society. They don't require the time commitment of something that's true open negotiation, but regardless, they are incredibly interactive and player dependent, and it will matter so much to people that you're playing with, and the tension of, oh, I want that set. Will that person take it before I want it, before I get a chance to grab it? Or is it just under the bar of them being willing to take it? And sometimes there are those beautiful moments in Coloretto. I have played Zularetto and Aquaretto, and I do agree that those are both fantastic games, and they use this lovely mechanism to build more, I'm not going to say interesting necessarily, because that's a matter of opinion, and I don't think it's clear cut, but certainly a more involved, a more granular model of, building up a water park or building up a zoo. And if you want the cute animals and stuff, sure, that's what you go for. And they are still great games in their own right. But I agree with you. The purity gives it that distilled excitement and nervous energy.
Yeah. The other one that we do in that slot, if you like, is Deep Sea Adventure, which that's because the drowniness,
Probably.
it's a good push your luck. It's quite a good push your luck, because whether pushing a bit more works or not depends on how much everybody else is pushing. If everybody else is deciding to cop out and go back to the submarine there and succeeds, then you can often end up with enough air still left in the tanks to get back with a reasonable haul. But if you push deeper and everybody else decides at the same time to push deeper, you can suddenly find that you haven't got any chance at all of getting back out. And that's quite nice. So there's a lot of psychology in that. It's not just your own push your luck, it's actually everybody else's. And I like that in Deep Sea Adventure. It's quite fun.
Yes, in terms of sheer interaction and having to really take into account what everyone else is doing, I agree. All of these are fantastic. And hello, Josie says, I'm struggling to get games to the table as people don't seem to want to meet as much for gaming anymore since COVID, which makes absolute sense.
Yes.
But I like Coloretto and Dice Hospital. Another shout out for it. I think everyone here likes both those games.
Yeah. The other things we've been playing, is we've been kind of mixing and matching with.
It's lovely to see you, and also Tally just recovered from COVID, and I'm glad that you're recovered, and I'm glad that you're feeling healthy after your spell. Lots of love to you as well, and have and back to Germany. So if you're just going back to Germany, I wish you a safe trip. But and Alex says, I think that Deep Sea Adventure could be more fun for me if the decision to dive or go back was yes.
Interesting. That would change it quite a bit.
Oh, I do like that idea. I would be up for playing that house rule.
That would be quite fun, actually, wouldn't it?
Oh, and then
there's a lot of bluff in that. There's a lot of bluffing in that one. That makes it very similar to kind of what was it? That oh god, the one where you're the mine one, the one where you push like mine. What's it called? Having a senior moment again. To push your luck. Diamond. Thank you.
Ink and Gold.
Diamond. Ink and Gold. Yes.
Yes.
Where at least it's simultaneous choice about whether you're going to push.
So would you have everyone on one? You can't have everyone on one square. You need to have
Well, you'd need to know where. You'd need to probably use an extra piece to indicate whether you're going to. Because you have
a card, or you could go like 1, 2, 3 and make hand gestures.
Exactly.
3, or 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, you could.
To go up or down, like back up, back down, and then you maybe could still do the rolling and stuff in turn order, but you only draw oxygen at that point that people are going up or down.
That would be interesting. See how that works.
Yeah, so you've committed to it, and then you do all the movements. You grab your tiles, and then I think I would definitely play that. I would be curious to see how that works. If anyone else has any questionably quick questions, then feel free to go ahead. Otherwise, before we get on with the non-topic, it's just a medley of things. Let's talk about a brilliant thing. Brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant? Do you have a thing for us today, Alan?
I actually do have a thing. I think that my brilliant thing today is spring flowers. Because 2 reasons. snowdrops are out in the garden, which is fantastic. I know because Charlie's been planting them for several years, quite over the last 4 years or so, and she was a bit worried that they hadn't come up yet, but they're up. The snowdrops are up, and today, literally this morning, the first daffodil opened. We've got our first daffodil flower
in your garden.
In our garden, yeah.
Lovely.
So, spring flowers. So this signifies that winter is near enough over.
And for those who are unaware, I don't think I'm revealing too much personal information if I say that Alan and Charlie have a beautiful garden that is mainly tended by Charlie, or 100% tended by Charlie.
Well, pretty much 100%. Yes, I do occasionally help mowing the lawn, but no, Charlie does all the rest of it.
And there's fruit trees. There's things that actually are very edible, and there's a bumper crop quite often.
Yes.
And there are, so lovely flowers on the side. I no longer live somewhere where I have the privilege of a garden, but I do live close to a park. And so I am able to walk only 20 minutes. And then I see a tiny island with lots of ducks. And I can walk just 2 minutes. And within 2 minutes, I could be in the park with flowers. And so it's quite nice.
We also a couple of days ago we actually had a sparrowhawk on the fence, which was fun. Just right close to the house, just landed on the fence and stayed there for a few minutes and then flew off. But then we're lucky because we're out in the country, so we do get a lot of wildlife.
And Joseph says it sounds like a beautiful garden, and yes, 100%.
Yeah.
We have a few questionably quick questions, and this is the point where I remind everyone to feel free to comment, ask questions from like, follow. I mean, normally I just say, ask questions that's relevant to the topic, but since there is no topic today, firstly, Alex says, what does Alan's surprise stare look like? I mean, I'll try mine.
Yeah, I can't show you the banner any. I can't give you a resize of the banner because there's not actually quite enough space. I can't push it back far enough to have the whole banner.
I mean, we can see the entirety of Reggie.
You see enough. Yeah, you can
see the face.
Use that traditional. That's what Tony drew way back when we decided to call ourselves Surprise Dare.
Good morning, Jake Folsgaard. Our next question is: what was your most recent pleasant surprise?
Most recent pleasant surprise.
Pleasant surprise. I think finding out that Chris said this was exactly the kind of game that they would like to play. And so it's like, okay, now I know a bit more about them, and that's the kind of game that we might play again in future. Just knowing that Chris is into that, despite relatively simple compared to what's out there, but a little bit of economics and a little bit of track building and having the satisfaction of seeing the completed thing at the end. I think that for Chris, it was both the tiny bit of economics coupled with the sense of growth and satisfaction, because something like on the Underground, you might see a map of the Underground, but it's all there at the start. You don't get the same sense of ownership.
No, exactly. So, it's already built.
No disrespect to Sebastian Bleasdale, that's just a great game. And most games that I will arbitrarily mention are games that you can assume I think are good. But that was a pleasant surprise, having them enjoy it and also having such a lovely game evening. And also, actually meeting up with my housemate. I was passing through the area. I wasn't sure if they were going to be there. I do still have a key. I was going to just pick up my letters and go off, but then one of my ex-housemates said, oh, it would be lovely to see you right 5 minutes before I arrived. And so we ended up having a cup of tea and a chat for an hour, which was lovely. How about you, Alan?
Good. Well, my most recent pleasant surprise was to discover that we were having a problem with the production cost of War of the Three Centuries, which is our latest Pocket Campaigns prototype. And the most recent pleasant surprise is that it looks as if we can cut the number of cards down so that we can get the game within our cost range, because I knew it was always going to be expensive because this is our biggest pocket campaigns game yet. And the initial quote came in and I thought, tricky.
Would it be too much to ask for some sorts of numbers? You could either whether you could feel free to say no or reveal.
I'm happy to say this is, where are we? Where's me? It's over here. I've actually got it with me, believe it or not. So oops, the game actually goes in a box this size. It's our normal pocket campaigns game size, but this game has got in it a big board. So our idea was that we were going to double up the size of the board. So the idea of the board was to have a big board, which is like this, which is actually twice as big as the Ming Voyages one. And it was also going to have.
And all of this stuff is obviously prototype.
All this is prototype stuff. We're 54 cards. We've got it's 1, 2, or 3 players, and each player has got 14 small pieces, a king piece, 5 d6s, and a d10. And then we have the rules, obviously, and a couple of playheads. Now, all of that theoretically was supposed to go in the box. This size is a small box game, same size as
be very packed.
The other pocket game, so it's going to be absolutely
people will buy that and get a good sense of value.
Yeah. So I was quite concerned. Well, firstly, I was quite concerned would it all go in the box. And actually, I do know it will all go in the box, but the initial quote came in at just over €8 for that, for actual production.
And for those who are unaware, like there's a lot of the typical rule of thumb is you have to multiply it by 5 to get
even multiplying it by 4. We tend to multiply by 4 we tend to multiply by 4 to give ourselves a chance, because a lot of our sales will be direct. But even so, we're working in partnership with Two Tomatoes and Frosted Games. So Two Tomatoes in Spain and Frosted Games in Germany, and we have multi-language versions. We have French, Spanish, English, and German. But really, for a box this size, they quite sensibly don't want to go to more than about €25. Otherwise, it becomes it's just not saleable. So we need to get the price, and that's €25 including VAT. So you're talking 2021 really. So even 4 times you're talking. Really, it's got to be as close as possible to €5. Even €6 is pushing it, but €5 would be better. So if we halve the most expensive bits, in fact, of the cards, because we have for these games we have the big 75 by 105 millimeter big cards. I don't know you probably can't see that. You probably can't see the size really on that, but those are pretty.
By your hand. I mean, your hand is a normal size.
Yeah,
you don't have.
Those are pretty chunky. Those are pretty chunky, and means we can put quite a lot of text on them, and they're really good to play with, and particularly for the European market, they do like having big cards. So we want to stick with that size. The simplest way to decrease the cost, and we'll go into and when we talk about production, if we have that topic, the simplest way to decrease the cost is to just decrease the size of the cards. Yes, it is. I think it's actually slightly smaller than Dixit. It's exactly the same size as Nussfjord cards, which are a bit of a weird size, 75 by 105 mil. But we didn't want to reduce the size, so we think the reason why we have 54 cards is that it's 27 cards for the 3-player version, and there's another set of 27 cards for solo. And if you play 2-player, you use 9 cards for the bot player. It's because it's War of the Three Sanchos. It's Sancho of Aragon, Sancho of Castile, Sancho of Navarre. But yeah, so if we can get all of that information for the solo game onto one set of 27 cards, that halves the number of cards and halves the card cost.
And 27 is really good because that's presumably a quarter of a big sheet.
Yes, I have to look at the sheet size again and work that through. But it looks like we can save on that. We can save with that. We don't need play aids. We can have the play aids inside the rule book. Do a double page spread of play aid in the rule book. That saves money. So I think we got a chance of bringing it into the price, the cost
there
band.
was a moment of realization that you realized, hey, we could actually double up on the utility of some of these cards and cut the costs there and manage to produce it at a reasonable price.
Yes, that's the idea.
Congratulations.
That's relief, yeah. So that was a big relief.
We've got a final question, or maybe the final question for now.
So anymore.
If you could have a newly discovered animal named after you, what would you like it to be? I think I'm thinking a bird with bright red plumage. Maybe it also has other colors as well, though not just red. It would be like mainly red, but with wee bits of whites and black. That would be quite fun.
Could I cheat and have a newly discovered type of cat, which is named after Charlie, the Charlie cat, because her nickname is Sunlion. You see, so I think we need to have a cat named after Charlie. That'd be good. The Charlie cat.
And it would. Sorry, I was going to bring up the old joke about Charles Paul. And the other thing is, what would the name be, actually? I feel like we should explain that. Now I've said the words out loud. You had a co-design, and it was they didn't want to be informal and write Charlie Paul. And
that's right.
They wrote Charles Paul, assuming that Charlie was a man actually named Charles, which is, I would like to think, wouldn't happen nowadays. But I think that sense of male assumption does still exist in a lot of gaming circles.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't happen. It was a White Dwarf article we did under the name of Alan Charles Paull. I think it was doubly ironic, though, for us, in the sense that we actually knew a lot of the people at Games Workshop, and they still got it wrong. Still, yes, it was quite fun. But that was ages ago. That was a long time ago.
Alex,
unicorn.
Well.
That
would mean that if people are seeing a unicorn, and the question is, it's named after you. So what would it actually be named? Would it be named that's the Aquasulis? Because people would naturally want to call it a unicorn if it was just a unicorn.
Well, I have a particular species of unicorn then. It would be Unicornus aquasulis. I guess.
Yeah, my bird would be called
Aquacron's nice, yes.
The Bessie birds. I'm just going to
well, yes, why not? Yes.
Anyway, what were we going to talk about? Okay,
that was the recent pleasant.
That's the first thing that I wrote down. How COVID affected surprise terror games.
Right. Yes. Okay.
And maybe we should talk about Brexit as well. So I guess there are going to be, for anyone who doesn't feel comfortable talking about politics and pandemics, we are going to talk about that for a bit of time, obviously. I don't think we're going to talk too much about in explicit detail about death or get too political, but we will just talk a little bit about the ways that it has impacted us personally.
I think we'll try and keep it as positive as we can. That's an idea. Well, how has it affected Surprise Stare? Well, the major impact on us as a company has been that we haven't been able to go to our UK Games Expo and Essen Spiel conventions, and that's our. We're a small company. Our major outlet for sales, or one of our major outlets for sales, is those two.
You were planning to go to Aircon 2020 back in the day,
right?
Before you cancelled, and that was eminently reasonable for who you are. You are, without disrespect, a bit older and more vulnerable than some other people, and it's a choice for everyone to make for themselves. And I don't think there's any point in saying anyone made a good choice or a bad choice. I don't think
we agonized about that. Was our agonizing choice we made. It was Aircon that actually brought it home to us that really we have to make a choice about what the heck we're going to do. And literally, I think Charlie and I spent like 2 or 3 hours batting it backwards and forwards before we made a decision on Aircon 2020. We are definitely going to Aircon 2022, which isn't that far away now. It's next month, isn't it? Yeah. So that'll be great. So the big impact on us was not making our sales at UK Games Expo and Essen Spiel 2020. Also, we did go to UK Games Expo 2021, and that was very successful for us. That was great. Probably actually kept us afloat, really. But we missed out on Spiel in October because it was just too much of a risk, both commercially and personally. We thought it's too much of a risk to go, which I think a lot of people decided. I know some people went, and kudos, and the people who went, I think, had a good time, and that's great. We made the different decision, and Brexit had an impact on that decision as well. So that has meant really that our all of our commitments to production in the last couple of years have been slowed down a lot, and we haven't done anything. Well, we did
seem like there's an emergency if you aren't able to have a big launch and then say, hey, this is my new thing. Then it almost feels like, both from a business point of view and also emotionally, it feels like almost what's the point if you're not able to do that big launch.
Yeah, but we did have a Kickstarter already planned for February, March 2020. So we went ahead with that. That was our one for Ming Voyages and March of Progress, the number 2 and 3 of the Pocket Campaign series, and actually that was successful. It wasn't as successful as we wanted because I think because of COVID we missed the last day or so of extras that you normally get with Kickstarter. But even so, it was successful, and we were happy with how that went. And we managed to fulfill that successfully over the summer, although, well, as you'd expect, I think as everybody experienced, the shipping problems were quite tricky. But then again, we weren't going to China, so we went with Europe, and that in the end proved to be okay. And we had our backers were really great, and everybody was very supportive of that. I think they are in most cases.
Managing to get something out there in time does definitely speak to the level of professionalism in that. Okay, from a personal point of view, maybe our co-design, it would be nice if it progressed a bit faster. But once it's actually public facing, once you've gotten it out there, you do have everything actually set in place so that you will be able to get it out the door, even despite the onslaught of issues from. Yes, Brexit is adding, and recent law changes. It's not just to do with Brexit, but it's that combined with the recent law changes, and also COVID is affecting shipping prices substantially, extortionately for quite a while.
The big shipping problem we have was the changes to the US prices, because we managed the second half of our Kickstarter was in lockdown, and then we got delivery in July just as the US new shipping prices came in, which meant that as everyone knows, for most Kickstarters you're getting a very large proportion of sales in the US, and that meant that we had a real problem because it was like the quotes we were getting were like 3 times the budget that we had for US shipping. And so we didn't. I think the lesson I learned from that, and we've had not exactly similar situations, we've had other issues. You always get issues with commercial companies. That things always happen, So I'm glad that we didn't panic and we stuck with it. And our backers were really good, and they were happy to wait a bit, and the prices settled down a bit, and we actually did go through with the US shipping, and we bore the extra cost, but it wasn't crippling. So I was happy that we were flexible enough and patient enough to be able to solve that particular problem. I think that's the thing that a lot of games companies particularly have been able to do, is to ride with it to an extent and adjust a bit and maybe change a bit of your marketing, a bit of your sales channels, and get through the crisis time. For example, one of the things that we did was for some shops, we actually sent out sale or return rather than getting them shops to pay up front for the copies. We would do it on sale or return, and that, I think, well, I'm hoping that helped a few shops, because otherwise our stock's just sitting there doing nothing. And I'd rather the shops have some, see if they sell, than just sit in our warehouse.
And Alex is asking if COVID and all the situations changed the makeup of your backers.
That's difficult to say, because it was our first.
The US proportion.
Well, it was, the trouble is, it was right in the lockdown didn't really happen until the middle of the Kickstarter. So, and it's our first Kickstarter, so I don't really know. I think
you don't
have
previous data to compare it to.
No, not really. But I don't think it changed, because I think we have a lot of US sales normally anyway. And so I don't think it did. At that point, I think Americans were quite tolerant of the fact that shipping costs from Europe or UK were going to be higher, and so they factored that into their decisions. So I think we're okay. And just to go on with that one a little bit, I mean, we're currently doing a reprint of the Cousins War and the Ming Voyages, and that's due any day now. Talk about that in a minute. But a Cousins War pre-order sales, which we've got, are mostly from the States, even despite the shipping, and we absorb some of that shipping cost. So I give a discount on shipping anyway, because I want to make sure that I want to make sure I get more sales, and I'm happy to reduce the prices in order to do that. But I was quite interested that for Cousins War, which admittedly the first 2 editions of Cousins War sold mainly in the UK, so I think maybe a lot of our UK customers have already got it. But the American market is where we didn't have a huge number of sales of the Cousins War there. So I'm quite gratified to see that people are wearing the shipping costs.
People overseas becoming more and more aware of you, whereas before you had your customers were basically people who are hobbyists in the UK, people who are hobbyists who go to Essen, and then now it's starting to trickle down to the point where, thanks to your international partners, thanks to, frankly, Snowdonia, which has done quite well, I understand, for you, and people in the US might be a bit more aware of Surprise Terror games and think, oh, I wonder what else they've got. And it's the same from game to game.
That's very true. I mean, our marketing has always been on the basis of those exhibitions and a drip feed into the wider world. And since we've been around for over 20 years now, I think people are getting used to the fact that we produce stuff, and they know us a bit more. There have been a few people who have said that they wouldn't buy because of the shipping costs at the moment, and they very often ask, will it be in US shops? And while we can sell direct to US shops, that's not the big problem. We are actively seeking US distribution now, which we've not really been able to land successfully before, and I'm hopeful that will happen in the next 2 or 3 months. I think we will have US distribution.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
Which is,
and it seems
that will be a relief.
It's relatively recent, because historically, especially the first few games, if you want a copy of Totemo, you might be out of luck. I mean, if you want a copy of, on the cards, you might still be able to grab one, which is astonishing to me because it is such a brilliant game. But, it felt like historically most of the games were sold and then sold out and then were never reprinted. Whereas it feels like now you're starting to consider your future a little bit more carefully. And you're getting to the point where you're starting to think about, these are all, I want to publish games that I will be able to support for another decade. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, I am very keen that we produce the games that we can then reprint, and in a sense, well, the first one of those, which there've been several of the small card games, like if we go back to Fizzed, which was quite a while ago, and that was reprinted and taken on by other companies as well, for the American market and for the Russian market, interestingly. And that's the approach I would like to continue to have with our Pocket Campaigns series in particular, that we publish a new edition, we do multi-language versions, and then we follow up with a reprint within the year of publishing. That's what I would like to aim at. But the thing about that, for the English copies, that depends very much on the American market, because it's difficult to get, say, 5,000 copies in the UK for the Pocket Campaigns. They're I suppose they're quite specialist, although they're light games and they're relatively low cost. But they are kind of war themed or
as in 5,000 might be a bit tricky to sell just in the UK.
Just in the UK, yes. 3,000 is not a huge problem, because I think we sold 3,000 of Cousins of War in the UK. But with the US as well, then I think that helps us. So if we get US distribution, I think we would then find we've got a more of a perennial product.
And every couple of thousand, every time you're able to jump up to 20,000, if you can double your order amount, then it makes for a really massive drop in pricing.
Exactly.
But my understanding is once you're up to 20,000, then things kind of taper off at that point.
That would be correct.
This is when you get to mass market, the difference between 20 and 50 is apparently not that great.
Yeah, I mean, I would be happy with 10,000. I could sell 10,000 of each Pocket Campaigns
if
game.
I were able to sell, something that I still had it's weird. How would you define that? Like, still owns the publishing rights to, let's say, if I were able to sell 10,000 of something that I still own the publishing rights to, yes, I would be over the moon. I think that's like a really good number to aim for, and that feels like once you've got 10,000 sales per year, that's the point where it basically starts to feel like it's full-time job earnings.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm not necessarily addressing it in that way, because I'm retired anyway. I'm in the lucky situation of not having to rely on the income from the games to live on it. So, but I would still. I mean, I'd love to be able to finish off my gaming producing career in the next 10 years or so by having some really successful ones. This is why I think the Pocket Campaigns series, which is our first major attempt at a kind of
series,
a series of games, actual proper marketing, things like that. I think
I may, because we're coming to the end of the hour, but there's quite a few things that we've still not chatted about. So firstly, when you're doing sale or return, do you still offer shops as much of a discount as you normally do?
Yes, I would do, definitely. Yeah, I do.
Secondly, with the Pocket Campaigns, are you going to have, like always going forward, numbers on the side of them?
We will. Yes, that's it. The whole idea is that they'll be the same size box. They'll have similar style of artwork. So it'll be Clements France who does our artwork for all of them. So we get similar style of box cover, and they are similar styles. Well, broadly similar styles of games. So, the idea here is that if we do a Kickstarter, then people can or a Game Found campaign, people can then buy the other ones as well. So if somebody hasn't found them before and they buy number 4, then they'll be able to buy numbers 1, 2, and 3 as well. So they can have them sit them on the shelf, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there you go. Nice series of games.
The last question, which it's a bit personal, but you don't need to answer now. You can think about this. Would I think we are currently calling it Wheel of Death?
Yes.
Does that actually fit into Pocket Campaign series? Because it's not got the same. It's not about a war.
No, it's
a Pocket Campaign game.
No, it's not a Pocket Campaigns game, Bez. No, I think it's a separate thing of its own merit. Extremely meretricious. We'll talk about that later. But we have some ideas about how we might do that.
Let's move on to Kingmaker redevelopment. How's that going? I saw Kingmaker the other day at London Toy Fair.
Yes.
Gibson's had it. In their booth.
I've got King. Hang on a minute. Where's my Kingmaker thingy?
Lots of love, J. Cards. I hope that you have a lovely day.
I'm trying to find my Kingmaker board. Oh, it's not working. Oh no, it's not working.
Make you bigger.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. I'm not very good at this control, am I? There we go. There's the Kingmaker board. Yeah. Anyway, yes, it's going well. The game is now with Gibson's. So I have done my first bit, which is the development.
That means that your development now they're looking at it with their in-house team of developers, because
they're looking at it with their in-house team, production team. We're into production, which is nice. Then all the questions come up in terms of production. So they have to look at costings, and we're looking at the range of components, and they are looking at the crowdfunding options now for Kingmaker, because I think we've agreed that crowdfunding Kingmaker is the best way to go. So we're looking at things like, what are the stretch goals for this? So at the moment, so stretch goals and add-ons and extra bits that you might pay for, or that might be stretch goals. So the very interesting thing about this is what I've been working on with Steve Froud for quite a lot of months now, is a solo challenge. This isn't something which I'd ever thought we would get with Kingmaker.
Because it's all about politics.
It's all about politics. How can you
it's
get
all about the politics? I mean, yes, the politics of the era, but the talking and the negotiation.
Yes. But Steve Froud has come up with a solo challenge. Now, obviously, it doesn't have the same political, playing your opponents, because it can't, because it's solo. But it does model quite well the mechanical side of how Kingmaker works, and I've played it several times, and it's really, really good. Well, I would say that, wouldn't I? But it is. I mean, I've probably played.
I mean, I would trust
a dozen games.
Really good if it wasn't at least good, or at least very good.
It's at least good. At least good. I mean, one of the things is the fact that it actually works and is fun to play as a solo game is really good, and it is for experienced players. I wouldn't say learn Kingmaker by playing the solo challenge, because I wouldn't advise that at all. You really need to play a multiplayer first, so that you get the idea of how to play Kingmaker. But then the solo challenge is pretty neat. It gives you the bot player will give you a good game. It's really quite well. Oh, somebody has said in the comments, what style of game is it? Okay, that is a classic question. Now, Kingmaker has often been marketed as a war game. It's not really a war game. It's more of a storytelling game. So it's set in the Wars of the Roses. So it's historically themed. and it starts in the 1450s and it goes through to, well, the resolution of it, approximately the 1480s, 1490s. So when Henry II takes over, but it's really a storytelling game. So the objective of the game is to control the last crowned royal piece. The conceit of the game, if you like, is that the royal pieces, the people who are in the line of succession in the houses of York and Lancaster, they don't have any agency. They're just sitting there, and it's the manipulations of the nobles who are creating the king. Hence the title of Kingmaker, which is after Warwick the Kingmaker. And each player is a faction of nobles, and your objective is to take hold of a royal piece and get that piece crowned king and kill all the other ones. So that's it. So it's not a traditional war game in the sense you're not trying to take territory or anything like that. You're literally trying to manipulate your way through the power struggle against the other factions and control the last royal piece. Now, for the revised Kingmaker, which I've been developing, we have the idea of a prestige victory, which means that you don't have to go to the bitter end, because the difficulty with the original Kingmaker game was it took a long time to finish, because you literally have to kill all the other royal pieces, which means that you have to take everybody else out.
Forward was a typical 4 or 5 player game Kingmaker previously.
Previously, it was, you could easily have a 6-hour game. You could, because
how long is it now?
People could turtle. They could turtle and go to Ireland or go to France and to just not fight and just sit on their hands for ages. Now I tend to quote for a revised Kingmaker 45 minutes plus 30 minutes per player. So you got
a 4-player game.
4-player game is
hours 45.
Yes, about that. So about 3 hours.
So it is still quite an intense experience. It's still something you need to set aside the afternoon for. You probably don't want to start playing it too late at night. You probably don't want to start playing it if you've had a heavy day of mental work. But
it will fit in an evening. The point is, it will fit comfortably in an evening. Whereas the old game,
and have a bit of a chat, then maybe play a warm-up game, then you could start playing Kingmaker at 7 o'clock and still expect to finish it at reasonable hour.
Yes, definitely. Yes, I think that's what I was aiming at, really. And it's a lovely game. As a storytelling game, it's good because you've got this idea that you're starting with a relatively small faction. You're building up your power. You're maybe acquiring a Yorkist or something like that, and then you're negotiating with other players. You may form an alliance with other players, and you can win as allies rather than on your own. So it's got a lot of flexibility. Is it easy to learn? Well, we're making it as easy to learn as possible. I have produced a kind of guide to Kingmaker, which is a couple of sheets of A4, which takes you through a turn. So we're making it as easy as possible. It has got some complexity in it, as you'd expect, because it's got some war features. So it has battles and it has sieges, and there are various ways in which you can move your pieces around. So I would say it's not you wouldn't necessarily have a non-gamer being able to pick it up quickly, but any gamer would be able to.
So anyone who plays hobbyist games, who is interested, if you're not turned off by the fact that with 4 players it's almost 3 hours, then given that context, it's probably of a relatively simple thing.
Yes, it's not as complicated as a complex Euro. As I think, as Zachary just said there, it has got a few parts to it, but nothing really complicated. And with the revised Kingmaker, we've tried to make the game as smooth as possible, and that's the idea. To be fair, Kingmaker is a very interesting game in that back in the day when it first came out in the 70s and then in the 80s, because there were 2 or 3 editions, it actually was one of those games sold in places like Smith's. So it was sold to the mainstream the mainstream market, if you like. So it was more of a almost a mass market game, and it did cross that gamer to the general public boundary. Now, if it does that again, it would be fantastic. So yeah, it's. But I think it was Kevin Jacklin who said, well, after he'd played the prototype a few times, said it's not really a war game, it's a storytelling game. And I think that's the thing. The point is, it's all about, we had this heroic battle at the end where we managed to turn the Lancastrians away, and then we cornered them in Cornwall and defeated them and set Richard on the throne. It's that kind of thing. It's having those stories of how you manage to manipulate the other players into your victory. That's the kind of thing it's about.
And I'm really interested to hear that you mentioned Gibson's will be doing a Kickstarter. Did I understand that correctly? Is this going to be Gibson's first ever Kickstarter?
Be Gibson's first ever Kickstarter. Well, I mean, I'm using Kickstarter loosely, so crowdfunding.
Okay, so
yes, it could be game funding.
Do you know what platforms they will be crowdfunding on?
I don't know yet. That's not been decided yet.
So it will probably be a public platform, for example, GameFound or whatever it is, rather than a proprietary thing on their own website, like Hasbro and GMT have opted to do.
Yeah, yes, it would be a public platform like GameFound or Kickstarter. Yeah, but the idea is there that then we can have things like options, either purchase options or stretch goals for things like miniatures. So the idea is we could have little miniatures for your main army. Could have a miniature for representing the main army, and then you can keep your actual nobles off table in a holding area to show what's in your main army. But that would look fantastic on the board, and then people will paint them, so you'll have your main army displayed as this knight figure, and indeed we could even have some of the royal pieces could be miniatures as well. So that would make the game look fantastic.
And it's interesting, you've got this heritage, but you're bringing it back with a fresh, I mean, it's like 50 years, blimey. And
all new art,
modern board gaming technology and for modern sensibilities, because board gaming design has evolved in the past, couple of decades or 3 decades, let alone the past 5 decades. And so you've obviously kept up, and hopefully this Kickstarter will do well. That's part of your 2020 plans. But let's talk about, before we finish up, let's talk about other 2020 plans. Like just a wee glimpse of what we're both thinking about. Maybe a wee bit more about you than me, because people can hear from me every day. But also, what topics, if I keep doing this, which I think I will generally try to aim at making these slightly shorter, aiming for 1 hour to be the absolute maximum, and especially with repeat guests to be into like 40 minutes seems to be like a good amount of time, because then it's enough to have a good conversation, but it doesn't feel like it really eats into your day, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also, it's all about, frankly, what works for me to some extent, because today, thank you everyone, there's been a lovely crowd. But yeah, if I'm at a convention, I think that I've decided I am going to keep doing it, but it'll probably be literally about 5 minutes, just like, hey, I'm at this convention. If I'm able to get reception, I will show you a quick, hey, this is everything's going on, and that's it. Unless I've got, that'll probably be typically what happens at Aircon at 10 a.m. If you're at my stand, you might be on camera, although I will check with you before I show your face. But that is going to be what it's like going forward. But what are your plans for 2020? What would you like to talk about for future times that we get together?
Yeah, it's 2020 plus 3. Yeah, 2022.
Oh my gosh.
2020 part 3 is what we're on. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. I'm still. It's still March 2019. It's still March 2020.
I can't believe that I wrote that.
2022.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well,
it's 2022. My plans are a bit behind. He's had a lot on. Yeah.
To be fair, I think, Bez, it was me that said 2020. I said plans for 2020.
I think
because I still can't believe we've reached the new millennium. Anyway, yes. Anyway, yeah. So 2022. I was going to say what we'd like to do is get back more towards normality, but I don't think we want normal. We never want normal. We want to have exceptional. But our plans are to go out to more places. We want to go to in the UK actually. So for 2022, we're sticking more or less with the UK, except Essenspiel in October. But the other, we had hoped to go, for example, to LieraCon in Portugal in March, and in fact we planned to go there in March 2020, but that was cancelled, and then we didn't go in March 2021 for obvious reasons, and we were invited for 2022, and we've just decided we're not going abroad in March because of too many factors in play. But other than that, so we're going to Aircon, we're going to Baycon, we're going to UK Games Expo. We're going to have the biggest stand we've ever had at UK Games Expo this year. We're sharing with Triple Ace Games and Chaos Publishing, and Triple Ace will have their 3D, their new really good 3D printing Ironclads game, which is a steampunk space tactical game. It's
designed by Dave Mortimer.
Designed by Dave Mortimer, yeah. It's a beautiful game, and we backed the Kickstarter for that. I haven't got a 3D printer yet, but I'm aiming at that. That's one of the things I want to do this year as well, is get some 3D printing under my belt, because then we can do our own prototype materials. Dave does it already. Dave Mortimer does it already, so we have stuff for that. So that's what we're looking forward to, getting out and about a bit more, getting back into games conventions in the UK. We have a few games projects, so some of them are surprise there. So we've got our War of the Three Centuries, which I've already mentioned. So the Pocket Campaign continues, and we also have Rob Harper's game, which is currently called The Castle War. It'll be renamed, but I played that on last Friday, and that is coming along really well. That looks really nice. So I'm looking forward to getting that one out there, playing that more, play testing that. And then there is, of course, your game as well, Bez, the so-called Wheel of Death. We'll talk about that. We could have a whole thing on that, couldn't we? Whole show on that.
I mean, maybe let's talk a wee bit off camera and
yeah. And we also have Snails and Grails, which we're developing. This is with Dave Mortimer and Rob Harper. And the big thing about this one now is it's turned into a legacy game. Very exciting. Our first legacy. No, and it's very good.
How many people is Rob, asks Jess. Exactly one. Well, Rob Harper is one person, and this is all the same Rob. Although I think that's in board games, there are three Robs. There's Rob Harper, who's an excellent designer, Rob Harris, who's working for Modifius and sets up Playtest UK and is a developer, and there's Rob Butler, who does production and printing for quite a few folk. Myself,
and there's Rob Fisher, who used to do a lot of design, who did Monkey Dash and other things.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I got Rob Fisher. Yes. I had Rob Fisher on yesterday. Poor Rob.
Oh, right.
Sorry, Rob Fisher. Yes. I'll have Rob Fisher on again in 2 weeks' time.
Oh, good. Excellent, yes. So Snails and Grails, the legacy version. The Snails and Grails, for those that don't know, is the whole theory of that game is that this medieval manuscript marginalia often included knights charging snails and weird-looking hares and monkeys and things in them. And we decided, let's build a game on that. So we have a cooperative 1 to 4 player adventure game, which is based on the idea that these horrible creatures are threatening the villages in this valley. You have to, as is intrepid knights, you have to go out and fight them and stop them from taking over the valley. And the legacy game, basically, it builds over time, so you get more powerful characters.
Because it's fictional, because it's not set on a real war, presumably that isn't a pocket campaign neither?
No. This is a big box legacy game.
Oh, it's a big okay.
Big box game. Yes, it's not. It's not a Surprise Stare game necessarily. I mean,
Okay.
ideally, I mean, we'd like somebody like Osprey to produce this. We want it to be, something which is going to be a company that's got a decent sized marketing budget, if I can put it like that. So we want good sales, massive sales for this, because we think it's going to be quite a big thing. Although it's a fantasy type of setting.
About playtesting and how to get involved in playtesting other than just taking up time at conventions and coming over to try something. I think it depends somewhat on the game in particular that you're asking for. But I think that I speak for both of us that if that's something that you're interested in, if you're willing to print out a little bit, then we will always be working on stuff that we would love to send over an early copy of for you to play and then send us back a feedback form of. If that's something that you're up for, then definitely
get in touch. Please do get in touch if you'd like to playtest anything. We're always looking for playtesters. Yeah, and of course nowadays we can playtest online as well. So if you're prepared to playtest online, then that's, I think in the future that's almost invariably going to be an option, at least. I don't know how you feel about that, Bez.
I
certainly we
do
will
not do any playtesting online. My games do not like. Let me open this door just a second and see what's going on.
The good thing about live streams, they are live, things happen.
You open that door downstairs?
Alan, can you talk about
yes, certainly.
for 2 minutes?
Yes, sure. Okay, right. Yes. Yeah, so that playtesting. So we're always looking for more playtesters. So if you'd like to playtest anything, drop me a line. My contact details are around here anyway. And what I would generally do is see what kind of thing you're interested in. I mean, there are certain things, the Snails and Growls Legacy, for example, that's quite difficult to playtest online. But if you're around, depending on where you live, of course, we can always do face-to-face. And if you're able to print stuff, we can circulate files for printing. But I mean that's okay for small games. So Pocket Campaigns games is relatively easy because a lot of that is either printable or I can relatively easily make sets. And for one of the bigger games, it's a bit more difficult. So that's where we are with playtesting. So other things that we're doing with Surprise Stare is, one of the things that I've been concentrating on a little bit more is actually trying to post blogs a bit more. And I'm not very good at maintaining routine blog posts, but it's something I'm aiming at. And I think we have Bez. Hello, Bez.
Hello, sorry about that. Yes, there was a little bit of.
While you think about that a bit more, I haven't mentioned my book of the fortnight. Now I need to do that, otherwise we'll forget. And the book of the fortnight this time is this one. It's called War in Human Civilization. It's by Azar Gat. Thoroughly recommended. This is a book. Well, it does what it says in the tin. It's an analysis of war in the whole of human civilization. In fact, it goes right back to prehistoric times. It's asking the question: why do people engage in warfare? Is it part of human nature? Is it a cultural invention? What is its relationship with major developments in world history, like the rise of agriculture, the rise of the state, all this kind of stuff? And the good thing about this book is it's not just a history book. I mean, it uses a range of different techniques to look at it. So it's using anthropology, biology, archaeology, sociology, war studies, history, military history. So there's a whole range of interdisciplinary techniques. So it's thoroughly recommended. if you're doing any form of research into the impact of war on society, or if you're doing war studies or any games that involve war, it's really good for that because you get a lot of background. And his main point is that war is declining and has declined over the historical period, and he goes into some of the reasons why. Sorry,
could you repeat the name, please?
It's War in Human Civilizations by Azar Gat. Azargat. Thoroughly recommended. It's quite a big book. It was a Times Literary Supplement Book of the Year for 2006. Still very readily available, and it's in paperback. Oxford University.
It seems like even talking about what we're up to, it's going to be enough content for, especially if we're trying to keep these talks half the length of what we did today. Then I think that we'll probably be fine just doing a wee catch-up. I've listened to bits of Decision Space podcast, which I do really like, where they alternate general chats with a chat about a game. And I wonder whether we could, and the general chats might be a thing about a particular subject or just a general catch-up. It's something about one game, something different. And I wondered maybe we should try aim for a specific topic at least every other time we meet. And suggested by Josie, like inadvertently, I think that let's talk about playtesting. And I'm thinking that in advance of next fortnight, actually what I was going to do anyway was to try and get Chris to make up an early prototype for a game about drawing creatures, complementing the drawings, then complementing the complements. And it is it's not a strategic game. There's not really any winner. You do lose if you don't accept, if you reject or deflect your compliment, you lose.
Yes,
You're not allowed to do that, and that's a loss. Yeah. But people say, "Oh, well, he can keep playing, but you have lost," and you feel a bit bad about it, and they call you out on it. But other than that, it's just about giving nice compliments and paying attention, and everyone feels
that sounds good.
That I'm working on, at which I can't think we talked about before we started recording, is a game about quickly grabbing cards and you end up with 7 of them at the end, and it's about having the cards that have the most synergy. So it's got a turn where everyone turns things over, and then you look over to see, okay, which card I want the best, and then you grab it, or you don't, because sometimes it's worth waiting at least one turn. You probably want to skip one turn somewhere, so you might want to wait, and then if you wait, then there'll be something where you can grab 3 cards, but you've got to get rid of one. You're always grabbing 2 at a time. You start off with 1 that gives you a bit of guidance, then you go up to 3, then 5, then 7, then ends around later. Everyone else tries to catch up. And maybe you've got a little party planner who wants a party hat and a musical note and also a creature to come to this party. You've also got a blank canvas, which needs a creature to do some painting and also some art supplies. You've got a baker who, if they've got certain ingredients, they'll be able to bake a cake and you get bonus points, things like that.
Yes.
And it's a slightly more fun and whimsical take on a game very much inspired by Fantasy Realms. That is the game I'm thinking of, right? Fantasy Realms, where you're drafting cards and you've got the king and the queen and all sorts of things, and you put them. Anyway, it's a drafting game, and this is because of the speed elements, because of the way that I'm working. I just feel like online playtests aren't even relevant.
No, I understand. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. Gosh, you'll have to come round again, Bez, and we'll have to do some playtesting around here again.
Before we finish up, to catch up slightly, I loved the chat. I'm sorry that I can't engage with it. Jess is up for playtesting if it's Wordle or Boggle. We do not have the ownership of either of those brands. Sadly, otherwise it would be a bit richer than
Yes, exactly. Yes.
But there will be some word games definitely coming your way, including Dwindle, which is a solitaire game for the L deck, and that is one that anyone who has the L deck would love to hear your scores if you play any games of that.
Speaking of LDEC, I've still got my wargame LDEC to do. I haven't. Remember, I mentioned it.
You mentioned it.
Was it a year ago?
Might
have been. Actually, it might have been. I haven't done anything with it, but I must. Yes.
Josie says that her interest for
is that all? Is that all your interests? There's not many. I mean, really. Oh, that looks great.
It's a blog because it's boards, games, fantasy, sci-fi, chickens, cats, veganism, climate change, drawing, Buddhism, camping, cooking, careers, education, youth justice, LGBTQ plus activism, trade unions, feminism, disability, inclusivity, rights, nature, fashion, theatre, crafting, second-hand books.
Okay.
And Josie, yes, I did decide that having a proper Pride rainbow, because I am going to make and even though my names sound similar, they are completely different games. So this is not the game about quickly grabbing creatures and counting your turnips or beetroots or radishes. This is like a completely different one. That one's very simple, and you've just got to make sure they're totally different. This one, to mention, it's all about the synergy, and there is actual text to read. But anyway, yes, with the Rainbow Edition, quick catch up, the bold Pride thing, it just doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite look good. There will be rainbows, and it will be multicolored, but it might not be super in your face. It'll be like a subtle rainbow. Alex giving random name ideas or mashups of games, complimenting creatures and slowly
grabbing whimsical turnips.
Yes. Yes. You know what, Josie? If you are willing to consistently do playtesting for me, I do have about 20 decks that I don't sell online because it's not worth me doing so. I would rather make sure how to give, like, I've got few enough that I know I'm not going to get more for a while, is the sad truth. But if you're, I know that you don't, but let's talk. But also, I know that you said that you struggle with print and play, but let's talk about if you're willing to playtest, then let's talk about that. But Alan, yes, in future, if you want to suggest topics for us to, then go ahead. That makes my job a bit easier because, 538 episodes later, I have repeated a few of them. I'm not going to lie, but it's always nice to have outside inputs rather than me being always the one to make up the topics. And that was my cheat key thing for the micro talks. And speaking of which, looking for the future, my 600th episode, I've decided, is going to be long, but shorter than 500 or 400. It's maybe, I think, about 10, 9, 7, 6, something more than 5 hours.
You need to have a break.
It'll be a good number of hours. It'll be short enough that I can do that show and then do the next show the next day. That I'm just going to keep going and do a long show, and then, some days I'll do a 5-minute show. Some, when it's a number with 2 zeros on it, and then on that day I was thinking about making it kind of like a BG DevCon, where everyone comes in and does like a quick 10-minute talk, but it's kind of open invites. I mean, these things technically are, but no one takes me up on that. Like, if anyone wants to join, Josie, Alex, Jess, if you want to come up with a topic that's relating to board games, please let me know. But on that day, I'm going to have maybe people giving, it'll be 15 minutes per person, but you'll stay on beyond your 15 minutes, if you know what I mean. So the idea is that you might give a talk for 5 minutes, and then we'll spend 10 minutes as a group discussing it. Yeah. And then we'll spend 5 minutes someone else giving a talk whilst everyone else shuts up. And then we'll spend 10 minutes discussing that and so forth. Do you get what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. So I could do a 5-minute talk on some aspect of war games, for example.
Absolutely, yes. And if it goes on for 7 or 8 minutes, that just means we've got less time to discuss it afterwards. But yes, 600 minutes long. Oh.
When is your 600? Do you have an idea when the 600th show will be?
Yes, 13th of April.
Oh, right. I better mark that in then.
I have sent one message to someone that I've never had on the show before, to see if they would come on, because they are one of my dream guests. And if I can track down contact, well, I know I've got sort of 2 dream guests at this point. I'm going to be maybe 3. Sort of, if I'm like, okay, if I could speak to anyone who's actually alive in the world, these are the 3 people I would really like to talk to. Like, they are unfortunately all white men, which is there's been a lot of white men designers, but no, I will contact the other one of them on Board Game Geek, not expecting them to reply, but you never know. And then the third
Never know.
one I will kind of leave for episode 700, because I want to be able to, anytime you want to come during this day, it would be lovely to have you on. If you can't make it, have you on for episode 700. And yeah. But, anyway, it has been lovely. We do have to wrap up. So
It's been a pleasure, Bez, as ever. Yeah, it's been a
talk
pleasure.
about over to you. What you're up to, you can share, but only if you want to. I am going to try and make some letters. I'm going to try and make about 52, maybe 104 letters. So basically 2 typefaces. Oh, I forgot all the punctuation and numbers as well. There'll be a few more numerals and punctuation marks as well. Basically, I'm starting to get Alex to make fonts out of my writing. So there's already one font out of the original LDEC typeface, which I quite like. So we got that for promotional purposes. And I'm going to try and get 4 future cards that I make. I'm going to move away from what I did for In a Bind and Kitty Cataclysm. Well, for In a Bind, every card was hand-drawn. So every letter was, however many letters were across the 54 cards, I want to say. I can't remember. They were all hand-drawn. And then I could break the rules of typography, because I could have ascenders and descenders that were technically occupying the same line. And I think there's a certain niceness about, back then, every card was its own work of art, if you know what I mean. It was drawn as anything, but that's not sustainable. Like, if I want to ramp up stuff, if I want to make Bezzy bargain bags, if I want to work a wee bit quicker,
you can't do it. Yeah, you can't do that.
I want to have like cards with like many words of text on them rather than just one. Like, then I do have to have a proper font, and I've got to draw it a bit neater, draw those letters, and Chris is going to turn that into that. I'm also going to try and finish the possibly final version of a game about a game about drawing creatures, complementing the drawings, then complementing the complements, and I will make version 3 as opposed to version 1 or all the version 2s that there were. Version 3 means I'm completely redrawing and remaking the entire deck for the game about the synergies that I mentioned.
Yes,
that is what I'm up to today, and then I'm going to go dancing, because I'm dancing every Wednesday and Thursday, which is super exciting. And it is Mambo and Cha-Cha-Cha.
You were doing a lot, Bez. Yes.
I'm
going to hopefully keep it relatively simple. I'm going to print out the next version of the Castle War, which is only cards mainly. Well, it's cards and dice, so printing out the cards, and go over to Ely this evening for a playtest session with Brett and the other people. Yes, that will be good. And see what they have also produced. I know we've got Dave. I think Dave Neal's coming across as well. So I'm sure there will be some games to playtest. There's in fact, I know Brett and Trevor have got a game a card game, abstractish card game, which they've been developing for ages. And I've played probably half a dozen different versions, so there'll probably be a new version of that as well. So that's all exciting, and it's only half an hour for me to Ely, so that's really nice. It's not a difficult place to get to, so I shall be doing that as long as I get time to print out the cards. My other slight wrinkle is that Brexit. I have to finish off some documentation for my importing of the finished products from Poland, and an issue arose earlier today, which I do have to solve. So that's something
Fingers
that may
crossed
get in the way. So yeah, horrible. But
it's a logistical thing.
Sorry?
Is it a logistical thing?
It's a customs clearance thing.
This is why I started off, printing in Europe, and at the time I thought it was actually printing in UK, although Cartamonte UK were printing in Belgium and then shipping it over.
Yes.
But because I thought that they will deal with it, because that customs is a potential nightmare.
Oh yeah.
So catching up with the chat very quickly, Josie has an interesting sounding idea. I am excited to read that DM. If anyone wants to contact me, then in order of how quickly I will see it, it goes like Facebook, I will see it. I've got like alerts on my phone and also WhatsApp if you've got my phone number, but not everyone has my number. Then, email and Twitter, then, Instagram, then like Discord, but like I'll see it however you send it. I do check things. Discord, and Twitch I might miss, to be honest. So please, if it's urgent, then don't send me stuff on Twitch or Discord generally. I know that's on. But Triss is reading about PCOS because she needs to choose some protein to eat. And the day is empty, but like presumably some sleep in your relatively near future. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that you were isolating. Are you COVID positive? Lots of love, Alex. And yes, enjoy your puzzles. And I assume you've already done Nerdle, which I am quite enjoying. Yeah, once the kids had it, it was only a matter of time, says Alex. That's slightly sad. Too many Crap Kingdom cryptic videos. Which is the best platform, Facebook or WhatsApp? My number is, so on Facebook, I am Bez Shahriari. So if you type in Bez, we might have some mutual friends. But BEZSHAHRIARI. So that is what we are all up to, and let's recap and wrap up before we finish up. We've talked about quite a lot. We talked about COVID and how the lack of conventions has impacted things massively. We don't want to go back to normality. We are going to, hopefully the world will retain some of these things, like sanitizing before you do hand contact with someone that you don't really know. That just makes good sense, surely. And, at a table, sanitizing before you play a demonstration game, because this Concrod was always a thing. So maybe these kinds of precautions will keep it at bay.
Yeah.
We talked about AirCon 2020. We will both definitely be at 2022. And we talked about pocket campaigns, how there's a definite aspect for them. They have to be themed around war. They have to fit within this particular size of box. And there has to be a realism to them. Like, even though it's not necessarily a war game, it might be a facsimile of war or a war theme, but it has to be based around a real conflict, right? And then we talked about Kingmaker, which sounds exciting, like it's going well. We talked about 2020 plans for you. And then I talked a little bit about what I'm working on. And hopefully today, the truth is that Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, I didn't actually progress so much with my own personal work. But hopefully today I will get a wee bit more creative work done. And excited for that. If you want to check me out, I am Stuff by Bez everywhere. Stuffbybez.bigcartel.com, where you can buy stuff. Twitter.com/stuffbez, Instagram.com/stuffbez, Twitch, where you're probably watching this, YouTube, where you might be watching this after the fact. If you are, the final message of the day, like, I tried to ask a question. I feel like that should be a new regular section just before the what are you up to. Maybe there should be a question of the day. But yeah, question of yeah, let's leave it for today, but I'll put it in as a banner for future. Anyway, that's me. I'm in all the places. If you want to check out future streams, tomorrow I am reviewing a Korean game that is not on Board Game Geek, so you might not have heard of it. It is called Present. It is like Hacker Life Poker, but much simpler. Is it too simple? I think it is. I will talk about it entirely tomorrow, but I will analyse that and probably talk about it for a good 40 minutes tomorrow and expand on that simple premise. Obviously, it's all. That sounds harsh, but I will expand on that's my own personal belief. That's my personal take. Just to also give it some props, it has amazing, lovely art, and I have had fun with it. Both times I played, we did smile a little bit. That is a lovely thing about the game. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. And I want to ask Alan, where would you like to be found on the internet?
Right. Preferably email. So alan@alanpaull.co.uk or alan@surprisetaggames.co.uk for preference. I am on Twitter occasionally, and I'm on Board Game, which is a bit pathetic because I'm Bentham Fish in other places, but yeah, I'd already entered Alan Paull before I realised you couldn't change your name on Board Game Geek. So that's how I like to get. And of course, we will both be at Aircon, which is only a month away, something like that. Yeah, that's me.
And so, yes, check out Alan and Surprise Star Games. I want to say thank you to everyone. It has been lovely having you join the conversation, and it's always a pleasure chatting and having an audience and having you along to ask your quick, questionable questions and to offer playtesting, and I'm excited to hear your ideas and to have you trolling and talking about food, and like there's been a lovely chat.
It's been great.
Even though I've not been able to respond to every single comment. And to everyone, there's only basically one thing left to say at this point. Bye, 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 bye. This is goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's next one. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go.
See you soon, everybody.
Bye-bye, Jess.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye, Josie.
Bye-bye, everybody.